Hello, people watching. Welcome to the channel again. And today we have another interview with a very special guest. Let me introduce you to Carlo Alberto Hung. Carlo, welcome to the
Hello.
channel. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thanks for having me. Actually, it's Ung. The last name
Hung.
is from Chinese origins and is pronounced without the H, but it's just Ung.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so Carlo, could you tell me who is Carlo for the audience that doesn't know you? Well, I don't know you either. You're a very recommended person from a very skilled guy that told me you should interview Carlo, right? So that's why you're here, and I appreciate you for coming here to talk about Agile, Scrum, Kanban. So could you tell the audience who is Carlo?
Yeah, of course, of course. But I'm a always beginner, so I really appreciate the recommendation that you got actually about my experience. But I like to define myself, as an always beginner. In terms of who I am, well, I'm a proud father of three kids, which is very important because it's something that in my agile journey has always been probably the most important thing, because most of the thing I applied as a scrum master or as a professional coach, I would say that probably they come from the kids. Anyway, I've been working in the world of IT for more than 15 years now, and I started basically as an engineer, software engineer. But lately, let's say in the last part of my career, I discovered that I was really interested into organizational design and coaching people and basically making them growth. So I went into coaching and organizational design. I worked at ING in the one of the most famous agile transformation in the world, probably as a transition lead. Then I joined another big bank in Italy in the area of cybersecurity. So I was really happy to be in, back in the tech world. And yeah, many other experiences, smaller experiences, and then now I joined Canonical, which is the organization behind Ubuntu, and I'm working as an agile coach in that company. So I'm kind of very have several different type of experiences with agile, and probably the most important one, by the way, is still the one that is related to my life, which is also the topic of my YouTube channel, where I'm talking about how to apply agile to your daily life.
Nice. So you have a YouTube channel called like that? How to apply Agile to your daily life?
No, it's actually it's just doesn't have a special name. It's just if you search for my name on YouTube, you will find my channel. But the topic of the channel is basically that one. I kind of try to make like small videos of 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes a little bit more, picking one technique and then applying it to daily life to understand how you can actually bring back the common sense that is at the basics of many agile frameworks and techniques into the daily life. That's it's fun. I have to say it's fun.
Yeah, nice. So there has been a lot of times when people in my channel actually ask me, how do you apply all these, because they don't know about Scrum or they don't work in a development company or whatever, and they are asking all the time. Even my family, right? How do you apply Scrum for me when I'm taking a bath or something? And I'm like, well, it's hard, right? But that's good. So please, guys, look for Carlo Alberto, and you will find him in YouTube and subscribe to his channel, right? Please. Okay. So, Carlo, so are you sitting right now in Italy or where?
Yes, I'm in Italy. I'm living in Milan.
Oh, nice, nice. That's okay. So, so most of us do not grow up or start studying and say, "Well, I want to be an agile coach or I want to be an agile." Right? How was the transition? Like, you studied systems, and then at what point in your life, or you studied something similar like that, and at what point in your life did you jump into the agile track, for saying it some way?
Well, it's an interesting question because actually, the more I study, the new trends, new things coming from the flow, lean, agile, the more I think the mindset and the approach is the same that I always had from when I was a kid. But this is related to the mindset. I have to say that the first, let's say, technical engagement I had with what is known today with the Agile was as a software engineer when I was at the university and I was studying development methods, and I was starting to look into iterative and incremental approaches before actual, for example, Scrum was formalized, or before the Agile manifesto was actually a thing. And yeah, that was basically the starting point, because this all, let's say, trend coming from the word agile was coming from software, and I was in software, so it was kind of a one-on-one with the things that I was doing. But at that time was more related to building agile software, so like things related to design pattern and things like that. However, one of the things that I actually always loved was system theory, which was also something I was studying at university. And I always loved the way systems interact together. And one of the things that I came basically to realize was that when you look at whatever you're looking, you are always looking basically at a system. There is never something that is just a local piece, like just one team or just one person. Even the single person is, if you look closely, is a system. So when basically I started working as a professional, one of the things that I realized was that in my approach to the work, the thing I loved the most was actually fostering an environment which was able to produce a result as a system that was greater than just the sum of the parts.
Hmm.
And this basically led me to study many things, including how to make the team function better. I was a team manager at the time, so I started learning more about Scrum, and I took some classes and read some books, and then I started studying Lean and the Toyota production systems and all of those things. Then I went to Management 3.0 and all of those kind of things that move you to management. And in the end, I ended up in ING, where it was basically the, let's say, the formal jump. I was already applying most of the things like Scrum and Agile in software, but the moment in which I started my journey towards a broader, let's say, area of Agile was when I jumped into ING, and I started also uh, thinking about the human part of the system, which is probably the most important in today's Agile, where you move outside of just the these systems and frameworks and methods that you use in software, for example. And that was also the time in which I took also a professional master's program in coaching, mostly related to psychology, for example. And that was the moment.
Awesome. It's strange that, well, it's a good coincidence that you mentioned the people part, the person, the part that has to do with the person per se instead of the process. Because last week we have in the here in the channel Marty Kagan. You know Marty Kagan, the very famous product management guy, and he was mentioning that you should not, or you cannot scale with processes, that you should always focus on the people to scale any framework or any practice in the company. So it was interesting viewing the 2 points, right? The process side and also the people side, and you mentioned them both. That's awesome. Okay. Could you mention to us, Carlos, some of the useless talents that you have, or good talents, just talents per se, that you can share with us?
Uh, it depends. What do you mean by talents in this case?
Like things that you're very good at, and things that, for example, if you ask me this question, I would say that I'm really good at a game called Worms. I used to be number two in the planet, like in the whole world, but it's useless, right? I mean, it was a game, right? So yeah, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's very difficult for me because I think I always been kind of multi-potentialite, so I'm kind of useless in so many things, but actually not exceptional in in lots of them. I would say, a good dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons, which you may
Oh,
probably see
nice.
some kind of things, dices behind in my background. Like I never played professionally, let's say, but all of my friends said always I was one of the best master they ever had. And in my head, I was always thinking that I am the best one, of course, And yeah, okay. No, that's kind of things. And well, professionally speaking, I could say that I'm a good photographer. That's also
Oh,
some kind of
nice.
my hobby, which is totally unrelated to my profession, even though it's something I always loved and hope to be able to also make sort of a profession. Yeah, I would just put those two probably as something unrelated to my profession.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So what would be your favorite city in the world?
My favorite series.
Yeah, cities.
Yeah, no, I understood the question. I was just thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't watch so many. I don't watch them. I kind of stopped watching TV when I have the first twins. Sorry, the twins, because it's actually just one couple of twins. Lucky me. But I would say probably Marvel ones. I think I would go for the Marvel ones.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Um, Carlo, if you had to give a present to someone, and for some reason it had to be a book, what book would you? I mean, it will depend on the person, right? Probably let's scope it to me, to someone like me, or to someone like you that are in this agile world. What book would you give them?
Well, it's you're asking a lot of interesting and very difficult questions. So this is quite common, probably in the type of jobs that Scrum Master and Agile coaches do. I would say that one of the books that uh, kind of interested me a lot, and I think it can vary in terms of the technicality that you can get out of it. Has been Toyota Kata from Mike
Mhm.
Rother, which I find it's sometimes very technical and very in depth in describing the concept of kata and the concept of applying the kata, which is actually not from the Toyota production system, is something that is from the Japanese culture, um, in a production system. And even though it goes into very technical details and very, very close to what's actually the way Toyota applied it, it also provides you with so many hooks to deepen your approaches in the mindset of continuous improvement, which is my main pillar. So that's also the reason why I would suggest this book, because the most, let's say, the strongest thing that I believe in terms of in the world of agile is related to continuous improvement. So that word that, for example, in Toyota they called Kaizen, okay, which was
Mhm.
passing through the kata. Uh, so that's the book which I probably would recommend to someone in this world.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm guessing if I ask you what's your favorite Scrum event, you would say retrospective?
How do you know?
Of course, right? Okay, so
Yes.
next question would be how would you explain what does agile mean to a 9-year-old kid, right?
Um, I would say that a 9-year-old kid probably would be very good at understanding agility, because you don't have to go through so many layers of biases. But I would basically tell him that agile is exactly what he's doing as a kid, which is continuously learning about what he likes to do and then do it. So I like to see agile in this way if I actually am looking at to a 9 years old kid. Because in the end, if you think about, we think in the world of business of agile as the standard, and let's say the common definition about being able to respond to change. Okay, so agility from a physical perspective is a mixture of strengths, coordination, and basically the ability to move your body and control your body. And it's the same for companies. Okay, however, this is kind of the like the end result. Okay, so if you want to explain agile, I wouldn't explain it through the end, let's say the end of the journey, or where you are. Also, because you cannot tell if you are agile or not. If I ask you, are you agile? How can you answer if I don't give you a context?
I don't know, but that's why I do the questions, because I'm not good at answering anything.
Yes, but yeah. So if I have to explain it to a 9 years old, I would say it's exactly like that. So it's the continuous learning towards what
Mhm.
you want, and actually do things to achieve what you want.
Good. Yeah, sounds good. And applied, that concept applied to the organizations, I think that it makes sense, because in order to be agile in a team, I think that you have to like what you're doing, right? If you don't like it, it's kind of hard to have an empowered agile team. If someone over there is doing it just because of the money, or just because I need it to survive, right? It's a very different, way of working than when you see that the guys over there or the girls are actually enjoying what they are doing, right?
Yeah, no, and actually coming back to your question about when I actually started loving Agile, what you just described is something that may happen when you are working at an individual level, like with a team level also, especially. And it's very much related to also to motivation. And when you talk about monetary reward, there's plenty of research and literature out there to talk about, what's going on this side. And actually, one of the things was that when since I was loving a lot to help the people I managed to grow, actually coaching them sometimes. And I wanted to move it to organizational level. That's where things get more complex, because organization are complex adaptive systems. They have so many variables that it's very difficult to actually move towards that process of continuous learning in understanding what you want, because you don't have one person who wants to learn what he wants or what she wants. You have an entire organization with people who are leaders, and they are, regardless of what you want and what you build, there always will be distributed leadership here and there, and people flocking from one side to the other. And think about Scrum. The idea of Scrum, the difference between applying Scrum and making real Scrum in an organization, not just in a team, and making what I call, as one of the main dysfunctional anti-pattern, iterative micromanagement, is
Hmm.
exactly like that. So how many times have you seen teams applying Scrum and using the sprint planning just to select the work mindlessly from a list? That's actually just biweekly or monthly planning. Okay, Scrum present you with one specific commitment that you have to put in place, which is a sprint goal. And the sprint goal forces you to ask a question like, how do I see the whole system, the whole organization, the customers system change after I've done my iteration? So that's where you see what you want. In this case, what you want to achieve to serve your customer, to provide value, for example. That's the difference. That's where you become agile, because that forces you to learn. You cannot just fulfill a task. And that's the difference between Scrum and actually doing micromanagement or biweekly planning, which is one of the most dysfunctional, let's say, application of Scrum.
Got you. Yeah, 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 I totally agree. And so now that we have described agile and we gave you gave the concept, um, what would be, or what is agile coaching, and why do you think that we need agile coaches in the company? Maybe there's a lot of persons over here, CEOs, well, I don't think CEOs, but probably some important management guys that do not promote agile, or they don't believe that they need agile coaches in their company. Why would you think that we need them?
That's probably one of the most important, let's say, areas of how modern companies can actually leverage these kind of roles. Do you know where coaching is coming from, regardless of the word agile? It's basically coming from sport. Okay, and the presence of a coach made a difference, because teams who had a coach, and the first team who ever had a coach, became immediately the highest performing in the whole group of teams that were competing together. So everyone started having a coach. Okay, so what coaching really is in the end is actually having someone who's spending all of his energies into observing you and giving you unbiased, possibly, feedback and structure so that you can maximize your potential. And this is something that didn't used to be something that was present in companies, in traditional companies, like the ones using the traditional command and control approach or hierarchical structures coming from General Motors and things like that, that actually are still probably the most used today, including MBOs and these kind of incentives into building performance, which has been demonstrated several times is actually not the most effective way. So the thing is that in traditional organization, what you have is that leadership is rarely about leading, is more about controlling, and it's
Mhm.
more about setting direction and goals, which can be fine, can work, but as its own limits. Also, because usually what happens is that you have leaders who have responsibility of the result, of the people, and of the process. Okay, again, let me make a parallel with Scrum, and then let me get on why coaching is important. Uh,
Mhm.
in Scrum, you have three roles: you have the product owner, you have the developers, and you have the Scrum Master. What they are doing, they are separating the responsibilities. So basically, the product owner is creating the purpose, is creating a sense of relatedness about what you have to do, and is making this real for people to actually apply their skills. He's not the most expert, because the expertise, the mastery, is on the developers, which is a team who is able to transform that vision into reality, and they are self-organized. And then there is the Scrum Master who's actually working on the process and is also making sure people understand what are their roles, and it's actually coaching them into the role. Okay. Why is this important? Because if you think about the complexity of an organization, of a team, every variable can actually bring people into a fearful place where they are afraid about facing someone specifically or to face a certain situation. Or even people may be having fear of success. Okay, so they may be fearful of actually expressing their whole potential. So the role of Scrum Masters, or in the role of coaching, as well as in managers, because you don't need a framework where there is an explicit coach, but the role of coaching in general is to have someone who has the ability and the skills to observe and give feedback and foster the potential. So basically, spot when someone is, for example, feeling fear about a performance, and pulling them out of that fear and getting back on track. When it comes to agile coaching, what is this about? It's basically the fact that you don't have to be an expert of the team that is doing something of their work. You have to be an expert of the techniques to enable their knowledge to achieve the result. And coaching is exactly that. So, like, imagine you have a bunch of very skillful software engineers who have to develop an app, and they are going to be planning something. And they suddenly have no one telling them what to do. They have a product owner saying, "This is the backlog. You are self organized." And so they start panicking because they are very experienced in writing code, but they don't know what to do. They may not even know how to talk with a product owner, how to have a productive conversation. Then coaching in that case, from an agile coach or from a scrum master, would be basically challenging them into understanding what would happen. Like the example I did before. If I have a team that is stuck in saying, what should we do? I can just ask them something like, okay, how does the system look like after this sprint? Okay. And this would be a coaching question. So coaching moments. Okay. And yeah, I think the role of agile coaches is very important for one main reason, which is letting CEOs and management and companies understand not the role itself, but the importance of coaching as leaders of people.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. You mentioned at some point that it that we need to get out of this command and control. And for me, the other side of command and control is trust, right? So, as agile coaches, I believe that one of our goals should be have managers trust the team, right? If that doesn't happen, then it's very hard for them to have to be empowered and understand where they should be heading with the products and services they are creating, right? So as agile coaches, how can we make this trust happen? How can we promote the getting out of the command and control? What techniques do you see, or how do you do it if you have a manager that is always trying? And I can give you an example quickly. I have been in a project lately where we wanted the team to start, using story points, and management said, "No, you will not use your story points because if you stop logging time and planning in time, then we will lose the reporting, and we don't know how will you be performing, right?" So, what can you do about it as a agile coach?
Yeah, let me first talk about trust, because I really like the model that Stephen Covey promotes in his book, Speed of Trust.
Hmm.
And trust is basically something you can build on character and competence. Okay, and it's contextual. So, for example, if I go to a pizzeria, I will trust the pizzaiolo because I think that he's there for a reason, because he knows what he's doing, and I can test the pizza, so I know he's competent on what he's doing. So next time, or based on someone else, I can give him trust on that context. But if that person has to, I don't know, give me advice on buying a car, I may not trust him. Okay, so the first thing is understanding how trust works. And I agree with you that on the other side of command and control, there is trust, even though they may not be slightly on the opposite sides, because even in the command and control, trust can actually speed up a lot of things, even if you still have that model.
Hmm.
Anyway, the thing is that sometimes trust requires people uh, on the shop floor to build the trust. So many times I've seen people complaining about managers not trusting the teams, and therefore mandating things like what the example that you just said. However, the thing is that it's not always the manager's fault, because managers and leaders have a high responsibility of people and results. So it would be normal. Okay, so imagine if you let's say your wife tell you you have to rebuild the house. You have a big responsibility. So would you trust anyone else to build your house and then present the result to your wife? Probably not. Okay, so that's the trust must be built at both sides. In the case that you're saying, as an agile coach, what I would do, or in general, what I think an agile coach would do, is actually find all the possible moments for asking coaching questions and building coaching moments on both sides. So, on the management side, one question I would ask is, why do you need time? And I will use a why question to trigger the rational part of that. So it's like, root cause analysis. Then I would ask open-ended questions about what are the fear, what are the reasons to dig deeper, because probably this is an emotional need he has, like having certainty, being able to do something, having some degree of freedom in negotiating something with stakeholders and things like that. May not be totally clear. If this is clear, then we can understand how to actually organize the team in a way that actually can solve the problem for the manager. On the other hand, I would do the same. I would ask them, what is the problem in logging time and using story points, as they have different purposes. Story points is for you, for uh, for your continuous learning, for your improvement. It's not something external. Time is a measurement of something external. So what's the problem? And I would coach on that. The moment they start understanding what the team needs and what the manager needs, then we can try to find a way of building a conversation between them, so that they can actually um, find a solution. Maybe they need both.
Got it. Okay. Um, I have had teams that do not talk during events, during Scrum events. So they are, I don't know, nine, and you always see the same one or two persons talking and driving the conversations. What advice can you give the Scrum Masters that are dealing with this in here in Mexico, or anywhere, right? how to make the other teams trust or at least start speaking? What activities do you recommend or techniques?
Yeah, well, first of all, try to get rid of any bias, because you know, everyone probably, when you see someone that is not talking in a group, start thinking about the reason why is not talking. Okay, the reality is that everyone has different ways of communicating. Uh, People may just have, I've seen so many teams and so many different people having different approaches to contributing. Most of the time, people were silent because they were just trusting someone else in the team. So they were saying, whatever he says, that's okay for me, because it
Mhm.
always have been like that. Okay. Um, so having them talk, it really depends on the context and the purpose of having them talk. Okay. Uh, it goes to observation. So if you're observing a team and you're noticing that someone may have something that should be, for example, put under the light of the sun in a retrospective, and actually she or he is not talking about that, then you may spot a problem. So, as an advice for Scrum Master is to experiment with different methods of communication, like sticky notes, or I don't know. That's one of the most common, which probably doesn't even put much value in the world of Scrum Master. Or maybe I don't know, but just the fact, for example, of having a sticky note in front of you and a pen, and having the whole room silent, will involve everyone who's actually not used to publicly speak. And by public speaking, I mean also speaking in front of four people. For some people, maybe it may sound strange to someone, but actually speaking in front of four people, it may sound difficult to someone. So giving them the opportunity to express in a different format, like using a sticky note and writing small notes, helps them. So I personally love liberating structures, because they allow you to build contexts in which you can have psychological safety and different formats to express things as unbiased as possible. Uh, Plus, for example, some people don't like to talk to the facilitator, which is what usually happens with Scrum Masters facilitating, for example, retrospectives or events. Usually, people tend to move towards and shift their sight towards the Scrum Master, and talk to him instead of other colleagues. So, taking a liberating structure like one, two for all, and building and facilitating the conversation this way helps basically people to reflect in an unbiased way, and then form couples with people they trust, and start having conversations. So they have kind of warm ups, and then they can build together. And then at that point, we can have one representative for a group which has heard also others. And at that point, you have kind of a helped people who are not able to actually talk to to express themselves.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Um, Carlo, I have seen that with the adoption, at least I have seen this in companies across Latin America, right? With the adoption of Scrum and Agile practices, there used to be these two roles that right now these two guys are or girls are feeling a little lost, right? I'm talking about the technical lead and I'm talking about the project manager, right? These two roles in the companies across Latin America, probably in the rest of the world also, but in here, they don't know exactly what to do right now. When you implement Scrum, what would you tell them? What would be the role, in your opinion, um, if they are doing Scrum or any or Kanban or any agile practice? Project manager and technical lead.
Okay, that's tough, because if if you look around, you see even in the probably in the Scrum certification exams, you see questions in which they are highlighting there is no project manager in Scrum,
Yeah.
which is true, But this sounds scary. I've seen in my direct experience, a total disaster of very talented project managers leaving a company because they were moving towards a new organization, let's say a new model where there was not the title of project managers. Uh, there are a couple of things that must happen for those people to actually find meaning. and are related to understanding what's their role. Uh, the first one is related to leadership. So think about the technical lead. If you are moving towards an agile organization or using Scrum, what you are really aiming for is distributed leadership. If you think about Kanban, one of the key principles is promote leadership at any level, act of leadership at any level. If you think things like that, you can see that many successful companies like Spotify have built the idea of technical lead in a way that was not in conflict with Scrum. So the chapter lead, for example, okay,
Mhm.
you give them basically the mission of fostering what they are actually leader. So instead of using the Peters principle in which you promote them to something they don't know how to do until they are incompetent, you actually promote them to something that is basically what they can do. So if they are technical lead, they will not decide about the what people are doing. They will promote the best way, or how to experiment to find the best way of how to do things. That's what the technical lead would do in an agile organization. uh, why this? Because the what is actually something that the team is self-managed in doing, and is related to what the product owner has deemed as the most valuable things to do. So the role of the technical lead is still important. He can still be a developer in a developer's team, and he can be a leader. Even in a hierarchical organization, he can also be a manager of people who are not in the same Scrum team, but are in other teams, for example.
Mhm.
And his role is actually to foster the mastery of that specific technicality. That happens
Mhm.
also in other things. And if you move to the project manager in this case, it's true there is no project management anymore. In terms of, sorry, there is no project manager anymore. But still, if you think about large enterprises, project management is still a thing. So project management still exists. Uh, think about a bank. If you are running a project or a product, or some kind of backlog on a product for a bank, there are a lot of regulations that you have to fulfill. You have to fill forms and things like that. You have to organize meetings with stakeholders. You have to uh, do a bunch of things which usually project managers do. You don't have to expect that now the team is doing this in a chaotic way. So what I would expect project managers to do is that they would contribute in the same way as experts, as consultants, or, for example, as part of the team if they have other expertises. And in the same way, I've heard once a project manager said, I'm not coding anymore since a long time. I cannot learn back, for example. I say, really? You manage a portfolio of $100 million and you cannot learn something to actually contribute in a team? So again, most of the time is more related to mindset, and probably kind of falling in a fixed mindset, which is uh, kind of mixing the job title with the identity. So if the thing that those kind of roles should do is remove and detach the job title from the identity, because the role of project management is still there. So the things that used to be done in the past in the realm of project management is still present. The fact there is no role on that doesn't mean that those skills for project management are not there.
Got it. So, what I'm getting is that also you believe that the PMO will not die. Is this correct? Like, there will always be projects, not always products in some companies, like banks, for example. So, the PMO, do you think that they will evolve, or what will happen? They will disappear, or they will work in parallel? What do you think?
Uh, it depends. It depends on the organization. As I said, regardless of the structure that let's say the organizational chart can have, so hierarchical or sociocratic, holocratic, whatever approach you may have, the organization is always going to be a network of people, a network of networks, and have let's say competence and skills that will be needed to achieve a result. So I don't think there is one single way of saying PMO will disappear, as well as project management will disappear. Uh, it really depends, because imagine if you're a startup. If you're a startup of 6 people, you have no PMO, but you're doing the same things. You're still keeping the books, keeping track of things. You're still reporting if you want to have people investing in your company. So you are actually doing those things. So it really depends on what works for a company. If for a company, a dedicated PMO is actually making them work, then it will still be alive. The thing is that there shouldn't be any, let's say, excess of saying that the organization must only have Scrum teams and the CEO, and that's it. Then at this point, even the CEO is not needed anymore. Okay, so uh, Scrum, as well as any other framework, doesn't mandate really what titles or what roles you should have. Is just a way of approaching how you can shape the delivery, let's say, of the work, the process that you want to build, because it's a framework, it's not a methodology. So you build on top of that. Like again, like Spotify did. They use Scrum, but they are not a Scrum-based company, so they only use Scrum. Okay, they still have matrix and functional managers. They still have project management somewhere and things like that.
Okay. Okay. So just a quick question about the you have mentioned Scrum and well the Scrum guide, right? What do you think about the Scrum guide, the new one, the 2020? You think it's better than 2000 and 2017? Do you think that do you like the evolution of Scrum? Where is it going, or do you think that it's missing something? I don't know. What's your opinion around the guides?
I think it's still in the sweet spot that I think made Scrum the most used framework. So it's specific enough to be applicable, let's say, by the book, which sounds strange, but it's generic enough to allow you for building something as a framework should be doing. Let's say the last update was mostly related to some conflicts in wording, according to me. Uh, like renaming the development team into developers, for example, is something that is mostly related to providing people a hook to talk about their identity or to try to remove some biases somewhere. Um, as well as related to servant leadership for the Scrum Master. And the thing that I liked the most was the introduction of let's say the formalization of the concept of commitments,
Mhm.
because it made it, let's say, it tended to highlight a lot more what Scrum really is. So it's not for building just an iterative and incremental process, but it's much more related to empiricism and applying basically the scientific method to whatever you're doing, regardless of the type of project. So that's why you can apply it everywhere, basically. And that's really the most important thing.
Is there anything that you will change to the guide, like something that you don't like? I don't know, 15 minutes for the stand up doesn't make sense, or a single review with the stakeholders at the end of the sprint. Probably I would like to have more constant feedback from the stakeholders in another official event. I don't know, anything that you have thought about?
Um, if I have to be honest, I didn't think about something that I don't like and I won't change, because I believe again that mm, the Scrum guide has been developed in a way which is very precise and concise, and I like
Mhm.
that. So I think that I may would I have the kind of the temptation of build on top of that, because I have my biases, of course. So like I would add something more related, I don't know, to agile estimation or to the importance of whatever thing. But actually, I cannot think about something I would really kind of change or really push inside the Scrum guide, uh, like to make it more effective. Because I really think it's in the end, you could express Scrum by just saying empiricism and scientific method, and that's it. As opposed to a controlled process where you know the variable, the output, and everything's controlled. You say we use that because we are in an uncertain world. That's it, 2 words. But the fact that actually provides you with something that if I tell to an engineer, apply the scientific method. I'm an engineer, so I would say, okay, fine. If you say this to a doctor, yeah, it's fine. If you say this to someone who maybe, got into coding or whatever else by chance or by experience and doesn't have a formal education, that may be difficult, okay, or may not be immediate. So I think the Scrum Guide is perfect as it is. So that's why I wouldn't change that. Because if you follow it, just as it is, you would be practicing basically empiricism without knowing it. And that's the great thing of that. So that's where I would be careful of changing, that. I don't feel like so expert to change the Scrum guide yet.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Um, the Scrum Guide tells us that removing, I mean, what you mentioned is I totally agree, right? The Scrum Guide leaves the door open. So if you want to implement some other things like Kanban or whatever on top of it, you can do it, right? Because the guide tells you that. But then at the beginning of the guide, it also lets you know that if you change something, then you may probably uh, do it. You hide
It's not done.
problems, or
Yes.
yeah, it will not work as it is expected if you change some stuff, right? So it's kind of a tricky paragraph over there, right? So the question would, with that said, the question would be, what happens if you have a team and then they come back to you and tell you, hey, Carlo, we want to do three stand-ups or daily scrums instead of five every week? Or what happens if they come back to you and tell you, well, we don't want to have a sprint review this at the end of this sprint because I don't know. They have their reasons, right? We worked a lot on, I don't know, back end work, and there's nothing to validate with the stakeholders or to show them. So you probably have had these kind of teams, right? That they want to change the framework. What is your position about it? Are you okay with changing it, adapting it to each team and context, or are you like a purist, like said, no, let's do the thing, right? What do you think?
No, I think that sentence is there for a reason, and I agree with that. So if you change the basic elements of Scrum, it's no longer Scrum. And most of the thing is that if you change it, it won't probably work as expected. So let me, for example, pick the example you said. So we did a lot of backend work, and there is nothing to validate with stakeholders. That's not Scrum. You are not actually using a feedback loop, which is the basic of why Scrum is using and working like that. So all the events are based there to actually prepare for applying empiricism. Okay, so the moment you remove any of the things or any of the elements that are present in Scrum, which means totally removing them, okay, which is what they say. So you change them, meaning that you remove them, or you totally change the purpose, like a daily stand-up use as a status update meeting. That's also removing a part of Scrum and replacing it with something else. And the moment you remove any element of that, you will see that if you actually map Scrum with an empirical process, that is what any researcher would do, okay, in whatever they are doing, you will see that there will be some piece missing. Okay, so you can name any element, name any one of them, and remove it, and you'll see that this will actually not make a good scientific process. It will not promote empiricism. You said we only do 3 dailies instead of 5, for example. That's fine. Okay, you can do that. But what it means is that basically you are removing yourself from a moment in which you are inspecting and adapting your journey. So it means like, okay, instead of looking at where the wind is going when you are driving your boat, instead of looking constantly at where we are going, you close your eyes for, I don't know, 2 hours, and then we'll see. And after I see where I am, I will change my direction. Maybe fine, I may be lucky, but if there is an iceberg in front of me, don't tell to the guys of the Titanic.
Hmm. Okay, got it. Um, So what happens if the team is very mature and they are in the shuhari, we could call it like that, in the re, and they want to experiment with other things and they have already followed the Scrum exactly as it was for, let's say, 1 year, and they are delivering value, etc. Would you be willing to try different stuff other than and even if we then will stop doing Scrum, would you encourage them to try new stuff? Or
Why not? I mean, ideally, if you think about it, the objective of any framework, Kanban systems, Scrum, if you think about the ultimate objective in terms of continuous improvement, is to get rid of the framework. So you get so great that You are doing it, even if you don't think you are not doing it. So if they are very mature and they want to try something else, what could be this something else, and what is the reason for this something else? So it's like, if you are an athlete, and let's say you are, I don't know, Usain Bolt, and you set the world record for the 100 meters, and under the 9 second, like 9 second and a half, I don't know what is the exact record. Okay, what would you do? You say, okay, I'm the top, I don't do anything else. No, you challenge yourself. You say, okay, what can I do more to actually go even farther, up until the limits? In that case, we are kind of knowing that we are reaching the human potential limits, but we don't know, because we don't know what genetics will change in the next decades or hundreds of years. So even if they are really good, they have perfect sprint goals, they have a perfectly refined backlog every time, they are delivering on time, highest performance possible. The question will be, okay, now that you are here, what does here looks like? How do you arrive there? What are the practices? Okay, so it's like, let's imagine you are on coding, and you say, okay, we are on continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So we write one lines of code, it goes through a bunch of automation, we release 1,000 times a day. Okay, so what can you do more? What would you like to achieve? More connection with the customer, doesn't have to be related to coding. Okay, so what can you do? Okay, we do A/B testing. We now do change the way we deploy. So we make it better. It's like, when Tiger Woods was the top most uh, golf player, he changed the swing, so he could actually make it better.
Hmm. Nice example, nice analogy. Thank you. Okay. Um, Carlo, could you tell me what would you do, or how do you see a transformation at a very high level? Like, so let's suppose that you get a call and they tell you, "Hey, Carlo, we have this company, we have some teams that have been working in traditional ways of working forever, but now we want to be agile, right? And we want you to lead the transformation of this company." What milestones or what process do you see happening in order to get them from waterfall to agile at some point, right? I mean, it's
Okay.
a 2 hour answer question, right? But if we could just look at the high level picture, how it looks like, could you let the audience know? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you think about an agile transformation, or in general organizational transformation, what you are actually thinking about is basically change again. So you have to manage change, and
Mhm,
in terms of change management, change, if you are talking about one person, a team, or an entire organization, takes effort. Think about
mhm,
the last thing you have to change in your life, maybe because an external input, okay, which is what most people in an organization would experience moving from waterfall to agile. There will be someone saying, now we are going agile, so there will be someone else telling you to change the way you operate today,
mhm,
and this actually takes effort. So the thing that I found most effective, which I love also to use as a framework, is also a known framework, is ADKAR. It's basically a 5 phases loop which you go around, that allow you to build a sequential, let's say, state of mind of the whole organization, which you can assess, okay, to drive the change. And basically, ADKAR stands for awareness. So you work in the first phase to build awareness about the change. So, like traditional things like going to the CEO who's asking you, we want to go agile, and you say, why you want to go agile? And when you are going to be agile, what's going to be different from now? And
mhm,
what are the results that will be different? What are you expecting? Is this feasible? Is there something else about achieving the result, which is not being agile? So you build the awareness on that side. On the other side, you build the awareness about what it means to be agile, and how you can achieve that. Then the fact that you make it clear doesn't mean you have made the change. So you go through the second step, which is build the desire. Okay. So the fact that many people know that smoke, are aware that smoke is dangerous for your health, doesn't make them wish or desire to stop. Okay.
mhm,
So now you have to build a desire. What is the purpose of that? Why do we want to do that? How do you inspire everyone else to actually align with why you want to be agile?
Mhm.
Once you have done that, then people, let's say you are successful in doing that. So people are aware of what it means and aware of what they are. They have the desire to actually improve. And usually, for example, in software engineers, this is quite common that they want to be more agile because they actually love the idea of becoming higher performing and things like that.
Mhm.
And then you have to build the K of the ATCAR framework, which is the knowledge. So, like you teach them Scrum, you teach them Kanban, you teach them the framework, the tools, design pattern, uh, mm, all of those things, TDD, BDD, all of those things that you can actually apply to build that agility. And
Mhm.
then once they know, you coach them to build the ability, which is the A of the ATCAR. Okay. And then you
Mhm.
reinforce because you have to make this an habit. And for example, if you think about a normal human being, on average, it takes 21 to 30 days to build a habit after repeating the things mechanically and rationally. So you have to do this for the whole organization. And that's where the reinforcement comes on. And then things changes, the context changes, and you go back to awareness and new desires and things, and you go in a loop.
Got it. Thank you, Carlo. Uh,
And most importantly, you do this in agile way. So you do it interactively and incrementally, learning as much as you can in the process.
got it. Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah, I have seen waterfall implementations of Agile, and it's like, come on, right?
no,
Okay.
no,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, you don't. I mean, I know, I know that, but actually, if you think about, planning, usually on average, an organizational transformation, regardless of the type, take in average 1 to 2 years. So if you think that you can plan 1 to 2 years of
Mm.
changing the shape of an organization and finding that after 2 years the things are exactly like you planned, I think that that is kind of nonsense.
Yeah, I know. Even I have been in companies that have. I was a product manager at some point, and they asked me for a roadmap, like a 1 to 2 year roadmap, and I was like, I mean, I can put over there something, but it will not happen. I mean, the market will change, everything will change right away, and well, but I can put it over there, right? So yeah, I get you. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Carlo, one question. I have had persons in here talking to the in this channel about Scrum. No, sorry, about Safe. And some
Okay.
of them think that Safe is the best thing because it involves so many great practices, innovation, and you know where I'm going, right? I can see it in your face. And then
Yeah.
I have had some other persons in here, so great personalities that say Scrum is evil. Scrum destroys agility. The Scrum, no, sorry, Scrum, no, Safe. I don't know why I keep saying Scrum. We're talking about Safe, right? So Safe is evil. Safe is the demon. Safe is terrible for companies. What is your position about Safe?
It depends. Okay. It has changed a lot since the first time. I would
Mhm.
say that for sure, there is one thing that is an objective fact. It has a lot of documentation and a lot of business background in that. So
Mhm.
certifications and things like that. Don't get me wrong. I love certifications, but I use them personally because of my mindset. They are part of my definition of done. But in the world of safe and people that I've seen in that area, that's really a huge market, and there is a tons of documentation which is probably too much. And plus, safe is what I see about safe is that is not something, it's not like Scrum. If you think about sprint, it's a Scrum terminology. So it is original Scrum terminology. May come from other papers and that are were originating it, but basically it's kind of original. Okay. If you think about safe, apart from a couple of things that may be titles that they apply, like release train engineer and things like that, it's actually collecting and gathering things from everywhere and putting here and there into what in the end safe is, which is kind of a bigger picture of where you would place Scrum, where you would place design thinking, where you would place, I don't know, portfolio management and things like that in the
Mhm.
various roles. So I think that the original aim of SAFE, even if it was, I don't know if it was explicit or not, was to actually find a way to target the large enterprises and give them a mean to transition towards a real agile organization or more holocratic or network based organization. Uh, the problem is, as I was saying before, that change is something that is costly and cost effort. So probably many large enterprises ended up spending a lot of money in safe consultancy and stopping in the middle of the process, basically staying where they were at the beginning, renaming a couple of things, keeping things safe. Let me use this joke, so that they could say they were moving agile without moving agile. And that was probably the origin of why Safe got so bad reputation in the world of agile. So not for the framework itself, because in the end it contains Scrum, it contains design thinking, it contains Kanban and other things, and a lot of documentation. Okay, so it's not evil per se. Okay, uh, the problem is that the reputation is coming from the results that, in many cases, are not there. They are just, it has been basically misused for fulfilling a renaming or a trend to engage people. But you know what? The problem is, let's say, the problem on the opposite side for those who hate safe is that actually by renaming something, you are creating the novelty. And as the author studies demonstrated, just the bringing the novelty may bring new performance, new changes, and things like that. So it's not bad by definition. Uh, I would not use it in terms of, let's say, go on to a company that asks me to go through a transformation and say, yeah, okay, we use safe, so we start understanding how to apply it. No, I wouldn't go that way, just because I think that you can make it as complicated as possible, as complex as possible. There will never be a framework that is one size or three sizes in this case, which fits all. Okay, regardless of the number of composition, the elements that you can put in there. So instead of doing that way, I would just go the Adgar way. So they say, where do you want to go? Where are we now? What do we need? And we explore and experiment. Maybe you'll end up doing something that is close to safe. That's totally possible. But if you
Mhm.
do it your way, because you need so, you will build something that is not safe. It's closer to safe, but it's functional.
Got it. Okay. Carlo, could you mention some of the biggest myths you have seen in your experience around Agile, Scrum, Kanban, whatever myths?
Uh, Anarchy is probably the most the most encountered myth and monster in my whole agile career. Like when we're talking about agile, we're talking about self-organizing team, which means people are kind of doing whatever they want. You just have to tell them what's the objective, the outcome they want, and they do with no control or no boundaries. That's probably the hardest and most difficult to overcome myth. That is also an impediment towards a good agile transformation. Let me make an example. Metrics. Okay, in traditional organization, command and control, you need metrics because you want to control. People think that if you get rid of command and control and you go agile, you don't need metrics anymore because you're agile. That's probably one of the worst thing that you can imagine in implementing a proper Scrum team or a proper Agile team. Why that? Imagine that basically what we are saying is that you are an athlete and you are in a gym and you are just doing only the things that the coach is telling you to do, and he's only the only one measuring you and saying you did fine, or you didn't do fine. And now you are saying, okay, now I want you to compete for the Olympics, and say, okay, so your objective is for the Olympics. Go and figure it out. So that would be basically the same of the myth that people are thinking about agility. It's the opposite. You go agile, it means that you get total control of your empirical process towards building your physique so that you can compete in the Olympics, which means you're measuring way more things than you were measuring before. It's just the difference in the reason why you're measuring. In the command and control was because someone wanted to judge your performance. In agile, You're measuring because you want feedback so that you can improve and learn, and that's a huge difference. But that's kind of, if you start measuring the right way, and you have the discipline that is needed to actually really be agile, then you see that anarchy, there's not much space for anarchy.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Um, Carlo, let's suppose that you have a team and you, for some reason, they did a study or whatever, but you need to choose between Kanban and Scrum. You have to decide or coach the team, or you're the decision maker, right? So, Carlo, you have the instruction to decide versus between Scrum and Kanban. What are the factors or the criteria to go with one or with the other framework?
Probably the type of work. Considering that in general, I don't see them as opposite frameworks, because Kanban is really a system and a set of principles and practices, while Scrum is a framework for building a process. Okay. Um, so I would say that if I would anyway end up mixing the two.
Mm-hmm.
uh, because you have cadences also when you're building a Kanban system. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's just different what you're expecting. You still have something to plan when you think about replenishment, for example, of the batch. But the thing is that when you're thinking about this type of decision, really what people are thinking about is analyzing the type of work, which is if you are working in a service orientation, so like you have a demand, you have to manage a demand, and you have a skill that you are applying to serve that demand, then you may want to start before building something like Scrum, to actually use a system that allow you to focus on the right practices and principles. On the other hand, if you have something that is a value that you have to build incrementally to deliver basically to customer, and you need to actually understand and unravel complexity of what is the actual final value that you want to build, then you would be using Scrum. Okay, so let me make an example. Sorry. Imagine you are again a pizzeria. Okay, the pizzeria has a very specific skill, which is baking pizza in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what would you choose, Kanban or Scrum? Probably Kanban. Why? Because you are not incrementally building something, even though you will see that you actually are. But in that case, what you would want to focus when starting is how do you optimize the flow of value, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically using the skill that you already have to actually manage the demand. So the people are coming to the pizzeria, they want to sit at the table, order a pizza, and get the most beautiful and let's say good tasting pizza in the best tasting pizza in the world. That's where you would concentrate on things like limiting work in progress, throughput, optimization of your flow, and things like that. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you would start using Kanban. However, if you think about it, you can still think about the value for the customer, not just as delivering the pizza the way you know how to do it, but as the whole experience. So you can start thinking about, okay, what's the value for my customer? Because if you think about, I don't know, McDonald's and Carlo Cracco, they are both restaurants, but one is providing you the value of a Michelin starred restaurant for
Mm-hmm.
the food experience. It's a kind of an ancestral and transcendent experience of food. In McDonald's, the value is not food, it's time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So once you start thinking about value, you can start thinking, even if you're a pizzeria, about how do I increment iteratively the value that I'm giving to my customer. So the choice of pizzas, the speed I'm getting them to pizzas, the type of table that you have, all of the things that may bring value to the end customer, they are a product which you can increment iteratively every month. For example, you can spend a certain amount of money in building more, I don't know, features of your restaurant. Okay, in
Mm-hmm.
that case, you may start using Scrum. So you use both, basically. I would say it really depends on the type of work that you want to do. So if the team is kick-started and has to start building their performance, they will have the two type of work. They will have operations and service type of work, as well as delivery, value, and incremental work, probably, as all the teams that have met have both types of work. But they will have a kind of a dominant type of work, which will be either delivery of value in an incremental way, or a service like demand management type of work. Based on that, I would choose to start with one or the other.
Awesome. Thank you. So it looks like the delivery process has been addressed either with Kanban or Scrum. Scrum a little more oriented with the customer and the discovery part, etc. But do you think that we also need kind of a discovery framework or something? I mean, every company where I have been, at least here in Latin America, they are doing, some of them are doing really good Scrum, right? So, really good delivery and a little discovery. But most of them are not experimenting, are not innovating, are not doing prototyping, they are just not doing great discovery, right? Are we missing something over there? Should we have a discovery framework or something, just a Scrum or Kanban, or do you think that it should be on top of them, or how do you see discovery process in these frameworks?
I think many companies are doing a good job complementing what's called basically the undone work. Uh, when you are especially in software engineering and think about undone work, which is different from not done work. Not done is when you have a definition of done, you don't complete all the ticks that you have to put in the definition of done, so you reject the work and you start working again and continue. Undone is what happens after you have done and must be done to achieve and reach basically the final customer that is consuming the value. And many people focus only after the process. Okay, so
Mhm.
this is basically the Scrum, and if your definition of done doesn't cover until the final customer, then there is undone work. However, there is also what you're talking about is the undone work, which is before Scrum. And many companies are actually fulfilling this in a very good way by using things like design thinking or UX research and things like that. However, in the end, it's again a matter of balance. How much can you in your value stream enlarge this definition of done? So the more you can actually stretch it and bring into the team this capacity of experimentation and prototyping, the more you can use just one framework. And if you think about experimentation and prototyping, and is at the core of frameworks like Scrum. Even if you think about other influential frameworks, which actually uh, gave also in some way birth to most of the practice, like extreme programming, spikes and experiments are at the core of the things. And usually, one of the explicit policies that real agile teams have is that they have at least one experiment at every sprint, which means that they are always forcing themselves to discover something new
Mhm.
about the user, about the context, about the value, and things like that. So they always have at least one experiment that will, in the end, lead possibly to some backlog for building better architectures, for understanding better the customer, for building a better process, and so on and so on. So I think that regardless of how people are doing, this is for sure experimentation, something that must happen. Otherwise, you don't have probably innovation. Uh, the thing is that it's not always possible to have everything concentrated in one team.
Mhm.
So maybe in some cases it's healthier to have a group of UX researchers, for example, that stands outside the team and provide then a wireframe to the product owner, which has to build a backlog for the developers to build it. But then they collaborate and kind of they can go inside that team. Is the case of Spotify or ING or other using the Spotify model, for example, Spotify engineering culture really. They have this concept of expert teams, and UX usually are expert teams that do some work on their own as a team, but then they kind of go inside teams temporarily as part of Scrum teams for a certain amount of sprints, so they can actually provide support for you know making this experimentation become something valuable.
Got it. Thanks for sharing, Carlo. I still have a couple of questions. I know we're running out of time, so let's hurry up from my side, right? So Um, Carlo, you have a lot of trainings, you have a lot of certifications, you have been you have read a lot of books. I'm pretty sure. If you had to go back 10 years ago, or the moment where you started with what you know right now, and you would have to, and you wanted to gain the agile concepts that you have, and I'm asking you this in the name of many persons that are looking at you and saying, well, I would like to know what this guy knows, right? But how can I start with this agile world? What trainings or certifications or books would you recommend to these guys starting, or girls?
Uh, it depends on who's studying, because I can say what worked for me,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, everyone has a different way of learning. So what I did, and what I would recommend is starting from the basics of the concept. So do not get biased by a framework. Again, as I was saying also at the beginning, I discovered that most of the things related, for example, to empiricism and scientific method were also the reason why I joined um, uh, science high school and engineering degree at the university, for example. So it's really at the core of the concept of what would be the mindset uh, to actually build on top, and then you can basically use every one of those frameworks as a set of tools. If I would be going back, I would probably start again with Scrum, just because I think that Scrum again is specific enough to get you started. So it's like, a machine at the gym that is able to get you start with the movement, and then you can go free weights. Okay. Uh, and I would start back with that in agility, just because it gave me the structure to actually then tell myself to go deeper on here and there in all the other parts, all the other frameworks, all the other tools, and all the things that are related in the conversation of Scrum. But the most important thing that I think, regardless again of the framework, but just starting with the basic, is to start going in a community. So like the scrum.org community was very useful for me, because
Mm-hmm.
there you see, you can get basically the concept of someone has a problem. I can relate with that problem. How did they solve the problem? Can I solve the same problem the same way? And then you have
Mm-hmm.
a strong motivation for using whatever method that works for you: books, certifications, videos, trainings, live, in person, whatever, to actually do and learn something. Because that's how I did it, but that's how I believe that basically would help everyone to start on that world.
Thank you. I also spend a lot of time in those scrum.org forums, so that's great. And you can see when the guys answer over there, you say, "Well, this one knows a lot more than this other one, right? This looks like a better, more theoretic or based or knowledge based or data driven, answer." So it's pretty interesting, right? So I can see you over there. Okay, Carlo, any question that I should have asked you that you would like to answer, if you were in my place, that you would ask Carlo? Remember, the audience are Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, team leads, developers. So there may be some question that I should have asked and I'm missing it. Do you want to answer something?
No, that's a very interesting question. It's triggering me some reflections. Now, probably one question of which I would ask if I were you, but not to
Mhm,
Carlo, but in general, is related to being afraid of the hype of the roles. Because once
mhm,
you start going into the role of a Scrum Master, of an Agile coach, you may be detached from other things. Like you used to be a coder and you are not coding anymore, for example,
mhm.
which is also some managers are experiencing that. So that's a question. Are you afraid of that? What do you think about this topic? And there was an Italian showman which used to say something like, ask yourself a question and give yourself an answer. So it feels like being in that show in this moment. But yeah, I've been afraid of that, and that's one of the reasons why I've always been developing and keeping most of the skills, technical skills that I have, as well, differentiating alive, and being able to be a professional on other things like freelancing on software development, as well as being a professional level photographer. It's totally different, but it's a parachute in case my whole IT and agile coaching career fails. I can still grab a camera and go shoot someone for money because I can do that. So my advice would be to build differentiating skills that allow you to always feel safer, so that you can also, if you feel safer because you can fail, you will challenge yourself more and you will grow more as a scrum master, as an agile coach. That would be probably the thing that I would ask and how I would answer.
That's nice. Thank you, Carlo. So thanks a lot for being here. I think that it was an awesome conversation. I hope that everyone got a lot of value. For those guys and girls who want to keep in touch with you or follow you on your latest materials, videos, or whatever, could you share again the name of the channel and where can they find you in LinkedIn, or I don't know what social networks do you use?
Yeah, it's fairly easy. It's just my full name that you see probably also on the screen now, both on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you want to connect for professional and agile related things, LinkedIn is fully professional. YouTube is more applying agile to your daily life. And then I could be found also on Instagram as a photographer if you're curious about this passion of mine.
Awesome. I will make sure that you share with me the links and I will put them on the comments of this video so they are able to click over there.
Okay.
Carlo, thanks a lot for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I appreciate really the time that you spent here.
It was a pleasure also for me, and thanks for having me again.
Thank you, man. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Well, guys, that was Carlo. Awesome conversation, I believe. So if you like this video, please click on like and subscribe so you get notification whenever we have more videos. Thank you and talk to you.